Starting us off at number 10, Virtual Boy. Let's get an obvious one out of the way. The Virtual Boy was a 32-bit video game console released in 1995. The game was essentially a virtual reality headset that you had to hold to your head while also using your hands for the controller that came with it. It was marketed as the first console to be able to display stereoscopic 3D graphics. They created an illusion of depth by using some mind tricks, which is pretty cool. This sounds all around fun, right? Well, remember, you need to hold this thing to your head while using your hands to use the controller to play the actual game. Oh, and I forgot to mention the only color you can see is red. Yeah, the only color you can see using this console is red, and the system is also red. I get it's your color, Nintendo, but come on, you're pushing it. That's coming from me, and I love red, even though I'm wearing blue. Next up at number 9, My Nintendo Rewards. Club Nintendo. Anyone remember that? I do. Being able to earn sick rewards for buying Nintendo games? Hell yeah! You can get anything from games, t-shirts, calendars, and other cool Nintendo swag when this program was at its peak. But then Nintendo announced My Nintendo Rewards. Now, don't get me wrong, some of you may enjoy this service, but as it was being marketed as an improved Club Nintendo, they severely failed to deliver. With My Nintendo Rewards, you can get some games for sure for the Wii U, and you can get discounts on games. Oh, so I can get free games for a console I've only known one person to have, and the consoles I do have I only get discounts? Yes, you can also get discounts on Wii U games as well, since, you know, even if they won't be losing much money because literally no one has a Wii U, it's still a valuable asset to the company. Sure. Number 8, losing third parties. Nintendo prides itself on being different. They did it with the Virtual Boy and they did it with the NES and GameCube. However, being different pushed away a lot of third-party developers. The issue that they had was that the GameCube had smaller discs and the NES had cartridges. So being able to put out games on these consoles, they would have to change how they made their games. They would have had to adapt them and put them into those medium, and that costs money. And it's money the companies were just not willing to spend. That's why Nintendo is the company behind most of their games, because no one else cares enough to put them out. They can use the same game for PlayStation, Xbox, and even PC, just need to reconfigure some settings. They don't need to blow thousands of dollars into shrinking the disc like I blew thousands of dollars into my shrink. Number 7, the Nintendo 64 DD. Did you know that Sony and Nintendo were actually working together at one point? Yeah, they were developing a console together, but I'll get to that later in this list. After Sony left the project, Nintendo realized that they might have been onto something when they were talking about discs. Nintendo wanted to stick to their cartridges, however. They worked on adapting to the new medium, but they didn't make a new console. Instead, they made the Nintendo 64 DD, which stands for disk drive. This was meant to be an add-on to the Nintendo 64, essentially a peripheral that allowed the console to read and program discs. It was meant to be a developer's console, but unfortunately, they didn't understand how to market it to the correct demographic. Look, I went to college for advertising, and after looking at some of their advertising, it's not at all directed to the correct market at all. I said it all twice, that's how bad it is. It hardly shows the device, and when it does, it says it's going under the Nintendo 64 and that's it. Nothing about programming. I mean, I can't understand Japanese, but from what I could tell, there was nothing that referenced programming. This is the kind of thing they would show me at school to show me what not to do. Epic fail, Nintendo. Number 6, new Wii models. Wait, so there are newer Wii models? Yes. That are worse than the old ones? Yes. How? Well, dear viewer, the Wii system was so popular back in the day that I remember for Christmas my sister and I wanted one so bad. We begged our parents. When it gets to the day of, as we're opening our gifts, we seem to open quite a few GameCube games. We were confused, but our father explained that they used to be his, and the Wii supports GameCube games as well. Like, isn't that terrific? Like, you can still play all your older games. If you have games and you can't get a GameCube, you can now use your Wii. No, you can't. Not if you get a newer model at least. Nintendo really shot themselves in the foot on this one. The backwards compatibility is amazing since GameCubes are pretty rare unless you want to spend more than a pretty penny online, from what I've seen at least. So why would Nintendo do this? Because it's cheaper. Now they don't seem to produce these anymore, or at least you can't get them in stores because they're pushing the Switch. But for those of you who are thinking of getting a new one because your disc reader died or because the system is slow now, good luck, especially if you want to use it for GameCube games. Not salty at all. Number 5. Censoring Mortal Kombat. Now when I think of Mortal Kombat, I think of the gruesome fatalities and the horrific gore that comes along with playing one of these games. It has an M rating for a reason, right? Well, apparently this was too much for Nintendo since they censored the fatalities in Mortal Kombat for the SNES. Doing this gave Nintendo a rep for being family friendly, which isn't a bad thing at all. They're similar to Disney and Pixar in that way. but they also became the butt of all family-friendly jokes. They gained the rep of being too family-friendly, and it turned away quite a bit of their market. I still know Nintendo is family-friendly. I'm just happy they didn't censor Super Smash Bros. Or Wii Sports Boxing. Number 4, the Super Mario Bros. Movie. This ain't no game. You're right, Nintendo, it's not. It's a business. Businesses shouldn't make stupid decisions that cause one of their biggest franchises to be mocked and laughed at. I still laugh when I think of this movie because it's so bad. Released in 1993, the Super Smash Bros. Movie claimed to be a fantasy comedy film based loosely on the Mario video games. This movie has so many issues I don't even want to get into it. It's basically the Superman 64 of video game movies. Yeah, I said it. Deal with it. The basis of this movie is what if the meteor we think killed the dinosaurs actually created a parallel dimension? What? How could someone have greenlit this movie? Why would Nintendo allow anyone to do this? Why did it take 2 directors to make this actual piece of garbage? Number 3, losing Sony. This is what I was talking about earlier in the list. Back in the early days of the N64 development, Sony came to Nintendo and started working on the next console in tandem. They were working together for the next console. Unfortunately though, there were some creative differences, particularly surrounding the use of discs. Since they could hold more data and were just all around more reliable and efficient than cartridges, but Nintendo didn't care and wanted to stick with their cartridges, probably because they knew it worked and didn't want to experiment with a medium that they didn't understand or might not be as reliable as what they were used to. They might not have wanted to lose valuable time and resources, which is understandable. However, this didn't stop Sony. They left the project, but having a feeling they were onto something with discs, they pursued it and created the Sony PlayStation. Since it was able to support discs, it could handle larger games like Final Fantasy VII and Oddworld: Abe's Exodus. Because Nintendo wanted to stick with what they knew, they ended up creating one of the biggest powerhouses in modern gaming, and one of their biggest competitors. Sucks to suck, Nintendo. For the record, I don't hate Nintendo. I'm just salty because that's just me. Number 2, selling Rare. You may know Rare for producing games like Gears of War and Cameo for various Xbox consoles, but they used to be a second-party developer for Nintendo. Rare created games that made a Nintendo console worth owning. They made Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, and Battletoads. Awesome. These games were really good, and the company didn't drop in quality when it went to Microsoft. For the Xbox One, that compiles all Rare's greatest games for you to play, except for those that involve Nintendo characters, obviously. No matter how stupid Nintendo feels for losing Rare, they did have Retro Studios take over Donkey Kong, so at least it's not all lost. Finally, at number 1, gimmicky peripherals. Now, I put this at number 1 because I actually hate this, and when I say those words in reference to Nintendo, you should already be able to at least think of 1 or 2. Nintendo has been the hype man for poorly designed and integrated peripherals for a long time. It started back with the NES. Remember the Power Glove?
I love the Power Glove. It's so
What about Rob? What about the tennis racket, golf club, baseball bat, and steering wheel for Wii Sports and Mario Kart? What about the inflatable racing cart, Wii Sports bowling ball, and light up lightsabers? And don't forget the dumbbells. Yes, these are all real and these are all gimmicks that shouldn't have been created. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some good ones, but those are for complicated games with mechanics that can be confusing, especially with a variety of buttons. There's this one game that my friend owned for the Wii, and it had a shotgun accessory. It was a hunting game, and it was useful. It reloaded and shot since the buttons were confusing, especially if you were holding the Wii remote like this trying to shoot animals. Can I say that on YouTube? So that one was helpful, but that's the only one that I've seen be useful to this day. Don't waste your money on stuff like this, guys.
This is Forky.
I'm trash.
Our kid made
Number 10, PlayStation Home. PlayStation Home was launched on December 11, 2008, and the launch was a disaster. The servers were inaccessible to players for a while until the PSN shut down entirely for an hour. When it came back, you could finally get onto the PS Home servers. This was only the beginning of the issues. A slew of connection issues, Sony removing voice chat from the game only to bring it back 4 days later. While connection issues continued to be a slight issue, they seemed to have it under control. They then added games along with things you could purchase for your character. Think Gary's Mod Hotel if you know what that is at least. Even though they claimed the service was quite profitable, there seemed to be no version for the PS4 that had been announced. No matter how good they claimed it was for their business, they shut it down on March 31st, 2015, and made way for bigger and better screw-ups. Number 9, the PlayStation Move, turning the PlayStation into a Wii. And with very limited games on the system for the PlayStation Move, they didn't really sell like hotcakes. However, Sony did step up their game with the PS4. The PlayStation VR has a wide variety of VR games to play, from Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted to Skyrim, and many more. This is a mistake that Sony learned from, and then they decided to redo and improve on it in the later years, rather than just scrapping the whole thing and giving up. So thank you, Sony. Even if it may not be as smooth as other VR systems, as I've read multiple reviews myself because I was considering getting one, it's a step in the right direction. So when the next set of consoles comes out and Elder Scrolls 6 VR is announced, I hope you will improve on it even more. Number 8, Polygon Man. Polygon Man is a former mascot for the PlayStation in North America from 1995. He appeared in pre-launch ads, commenting on various games, but was dropped before the release of the first console. Phil Harrison, the head of Sony's European game publishing business, was talking about Ken Kutaragi, the global head of the PlayStation brand's first moments of seeing Polygon Man. He said, "I remember walking onto the E3 booth with Ken and seeing the Polygon Man design on the side of the booth. Ken just went absolutely insane." Ken was obviously upset that they were spending their limited budget on this, and his biggest complaint was that the shading was so flat. So after this, they took Polygon Man out into the parking lot and quickly shot him. But I remember him more recently, you might be saying, as I was when I saw him in a picture. Why is that? Well, it's because in 2012, Polygon Man returned as the main antagonist and final boss of the Super Smash Bros. Ripoff game, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I actually have this game, and I played it all the way through the story. Kratos was my main. I love being able to hit people as a bird. But they hated this character so much that they literally made him the antagonist to all of PlayStation's biggest hits. And Parappa the Rappa. Number 7, the Xperia Play. The Xperia Play was PlayStation's attempt to close the gap between phone and console, and let the two connect and converse. It was essentially a smartphone with the capabilities of some handheld gaming consoles. It was running on an Android operating system and was the opposite to the PlayStation Vita, which was a handheld gaming console with smartphone capabilities. The games planned for this device were vast, with games like God of War and Little Big Planet. However, it would have also included some older PlayStation games as well. The games were going to be under $10 a pop, which is very cheap, especially considering how the PSP games were $40 and under. The phone failed because it wasn't what people were expecting. The controls on the slide-out controller weren't synced, and it was just playing second fiddle to the PSP. Speaking of the PSP, number 6, UMD. UMD was the type of gaming disc that came with the PSP. I believe it stands for Universal Mini Disc, and came in an odd case that you would insert into the PSP, case and all. The PSP had both games and actually TV shows and movies. The UMD had its advantages over CDs, though they were minimal. It's like the Nintendo cartridges. People didn't want to adapt to the new medium, so they didn't put out any games on the system. I only saw a few games and like no movies or TV shows except for the Family Guy thing I had. But the PSP quickly died and was replaced later on with the PS Vita, which seems to have a slightly better rep at least. Number 5, Rootkit. In 2005, Sony started leaning in hard to copyright protection on CDs. If you're too young to know what a CD is, don't worry, I'll explain. They're essentially DVDs for music, if that makes sense, if you know what a DVD is. When you would load a CD from Sony into your computer, it would automatically install software to prevent you from pirating the music. It would also install a rootkit, which would make Windows very vulnerable to hackers. Not only that, but Sony stole the encryption code they used to make it. They pirated it so you wouldn't pirate. This whole thing became a huge PR disaster for Sony, and even after recalling all the CDs that were infected, they still were on thin ice with consumers. Come on Sony, stay in your lane. Number 4, the 6-axis rumble. The Wii and the PlayStation 3 came out around the same time, and so it was inevitable that they would be compared to each other. The PS3 was advertising new 6-axis technology with its controllers. Unfortunately, the 6-axis controllers didn't have vibration like the DualShock 2's did. They claimed it would interfere with the motion sensing technology, and since the Wii controllers had both motion sensing tech and vibrations, the community quickly called BS. Sony eventually ended up proving themselves wrong when they released the DualShock 3, which had both motion sensing technology and vibrations all functioning perfectly fine. They need to realize that lying is not a good idea, especially when you can prove that you were lying when you come out with the exact same thing that you said couldn't be done, years after your competitor did too. Number 3, the Great PSN Outage. In 2011, the Sony PSN, or PlayStation Network, lost all functionality due to an external intrusion. The servers were hacked and approximately 77 million accounts were compromised, and it prevented all users from the PS3 and PSP from accessing online services. That means YouTube, web browsers, and online gameplay were all shot. It even beat out the 2007 TJX hack, which affected 45 million customers. Various government officials in several countries voiced their concern over the theft, and Sony's 1-week delay before warning users that their data might have been stolen. They said on April 26th they were hoping to get things running in a week. They released an update on May 14th that required users to change their passwords before logging in, but the online services weren't fixed. On May 1st, Sony announced a welcome back program for customers affected by the outage that involved restoring gameplay, accessing account management, access to PlayStation Home, your friends list, and chat functionality, but not everything was back. According to Sony, the services were taken down intentionally for maintenance due to potentially related activities during the initial attack. None of this makes up for people now knowing that my password is I love you sold to Sony. Come on. Number 2, the $600 debacle. After the huge success of the PlayStation 2, Sony thought they could do whatever they wanted and fans would be happy. Nope. With a hefty $600 price tag at launch, the PlayStation 3 was beaten out by the Xbox 360 easily. The internet was flooded with video clips and images showing Kaz Hirai delivering his infamous $599 US quote. But at least they corrected themselves with the PS4 by cutting their price to be below the Xbox One by about $100. But that's still $200 less than the PS3 was at launch. The original price is also the same as the Xperia Play. Let me know which one you think is more worth it in the comments below. Finally, at number 1, we have Disney. This is more recent news and doesn't necessarily have anything to do with gaming or games, but it has been by far the biggest screw-up Sony has had for a while. Disney and Sony have been renegotiating the terms of the MCU Spider-Man films. They reached an impasse about negotiations and their partnership as a whole. The original story is that Disney wanted to split the funding for the movie 50-50, but that seems to maybe no longer be the case. Kevin Feige is the head of Marvel Studios and has been overseeing the recent MCU Spider-Man movies. Disney has since pulled him from the next project for reasons Sony would not explain. Sony claimed that he has many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all their newly acquired Marvel properties, and that doesn't give him the time to work on movies with characters they don't own. Maybe this means that Disney wanted to buy Spider-Man back from Sony and they refused? As of recording, we don't have many other details, but hopefully those will come our way soon. Maybe along with the announcement of another Spider-Man PS4 game? Since recently, Sony bought Insomniac Games, the developers of the last one. Pretty exciting news, I really like that game. I mean, I'm still playing it, but it's really good. Number 10, Windows Phone. Yeah, the Windows Phone. There's actually another phone on this list, but this is the one you can still technically get, I believe, if you know the right people. 0.7% of all smartphones sold in the first quarter of 2016 ran the Windows OS. If you don't understand business jargon, the quarters refer to the quarters of the business year. They do this to set goals based on these quarters, and those goals are constantly changing depending on what's happened in the previous quarters and their projected sales and goals. So in the first quarter of the year, 0.7% of all smartphones sold were running the Microsoft operating system. To put that in perspective, at that time Samsung had 23% of the market and Apple had 15%. Right now 0.7 may seem like an alright amount maybe, right? Well, phones labeled other, in which Microsoft would have resided, had 45% of the market. This means that out of that 45%, Microsoft had 0.7. Not that much now, right? Their company name should refer to their sales with most of these products. Small and soft. I'm not gonna go there, I'm not gonna make that joke, I promised myself. Number 9, Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer was only used because it was bundled with Windows, and at one point it was the only browser you could use when using a Windows device, a decision which would later end up costing Microsoft millions of dollars. More on that later. Internet Explorer was old and buggy, requiring major security updates monthly on Patch Tuesday. And leave it up to Microsoft to give it a boring name like Internet Explorer. That's like naming your child son, or daughter, or Spawn. Actually, that sounds like a cool name. Maybe Spawn of Satan? Well, at least now they're trying to migrate to Edge. But Edge has needed several security updates as well. At least we can use Firefox, or Google Chrome, or Opera, or Safari. So many better options. And one of them you can roll your screen around. Number 8, Windows 10 installation. Microsoft wanted everyone to be excited for and wanted everyone to feel as if they needed Windows 10. They were so sure in their OS that they actually made it nearly impossible to deny the update. The dirty trick they used was that they changed the red X button that usually closes a window to mean I accept the update and wish to install Windows 10. This screws with some software and hardware like printers and Bespoke. Some say that after you clicked the X, you'd be prompted with a EULA agreement, but even if that's the case, people would assume that's more of a do you want to deny this update yes. These are tactics that some malware uses to get your information. So all in all, shady tricks from Microsoft. But yes, it does get worse from here. Number 7, Windows Vista. Microsoft gave Vista quite the hype party. They built up this program so much that it was inevitable that it was going to suck hard. Everyone loved Windows XP, the predecessor to Windows Vista, so it had quite the tough act to follow, and it did not deliver. It was buggy, bizarre new features, and support requirements made it slow as hell and difficult to run on most machines. I remember actually using this in school, when you would hold like the Windows key and press tab, the windows you had open would like scroll by in like a beautiful wheel that you didn't have to go outside to see. I would also fake that it was a touchscreen by like pinching my fingers on the screen and pressing the Windows key to bring up the tabs and then swiping my finger across when pressing tab to make it look like I was shifting. I don't actually ever think I fooled anyone with that though. Maybe Sean. Number 6, Windows 8. Moving on to another Windows update, Windows 8 was ahead of its time. The world was not ready for it. The interface was light years away from what Windows 7 had, and the introduction of live tiles as a way to navigate was confusing AF. When I got into high school, I got my first laptop, and it had Windows 8, and I was so confused. To search, you would need to move your mouse to the bottom right corner of the screen and wait for the bar to pop out of the side, and sometimes it wouldn't even do that, so you would have to try again. Installing mods and stuff was simple though, but only because of the Windows plus R combination was able to find any folder as long as you knew the directory. %app data %, people. That's burnt into my brain. Luckily enough, they reintroduced some key features, but it wasn't enough to convince the general populace that it was worth the upgrade. They brought back the normal navigation style with Windows 10, but they also included the live tiles, and honestly, I never used them. I didn't even know they existed in Windows 10 until scripting this video. Don't even know how to find them. Halfway through at number 5, it's the Microsoft Kin. The Microsoft Kin was actually another phone by Microsoft back in 2010. I didn't even know this thing existed. The nearly 10-year-old fail was quite the kick in the nads for Microsoft. They pulled the phone off of shelves in just 3 months. Its lifespan was from May 2010 to July 2010. The damn thing didn't even make it to Europe. These things failed because they were built to have social media services be its core. They were also available exclusively from the provider Verizon Wireless. They targeted the phones at teens and social media addicts. It had a pop-out keyboard which was competing with the fully touchscreen phones like the iPhone 4. What would teens want more than a pop-out keyboard? A cool, trendy, fully touchscreen phone. It was expensive for its abilities and Verizon had to drop the price. And they still had to pull the phone. All in all, it was a major flop for Microsoft, and they should have focused their efforts on the Windows Phone 7. Number 4, Zune. The Zune player should not have really failed if you look at it. Zune was a series of products created to compete with the iPod and was a pretty competent all-around media player. In a time that we didn't stream anything on our phones, it could have been a heavy hitter. But due to some marketing decisions, Microsoft was never really able to capitalize and ended up causing poor sales after launch. How poor, you ask? Well, iPod had a 70% share in the media player market and Zune had a measly 2%. The Zune never made it outside North America, but if it had, it would have done well. We may not have been streaming things on our phones as much. Perhaps we would, since we grew past the iPods, but who knows? Not Microsoft. So not very much came of it, but it didn't end up costing the company millions of dollars. Zune was not their doom. However, the next number cost them greatly. Number 3, the browser ballot. Many moons ago, Internet Explorer was the most popular browser by miles. But this wasn't because it was the best, but because it came bundled with Windows free of charge. Firefox and the rest didn't like this and asked the European Commission to solve the problem. The European Commission did so by forcing Microsoft to offer a choice of other browsers to buyers of Windows computers and other machines. They called it the browser ballot. All was fine until an update caused Windows 7 to restrict browsers to only Internet Explorer, therefore violating the browser ballot. So we were all stuck with the crap stick that was Internet Explorer, until the European Commission fined Microsoft a hefty 485 million euros, which is $334,320,135 US. Holy crap, on a cracker, that's a lot of cash. I get stoked at like $200, let alone seeing $500 million. Jeez. Number 2, Bob version 1.0, because that was the only one. Bob version 1.0 was a software released in early 1995 by Microsoft and was discontinued early 1996. Bob was intended to be a more user-friendly interface for Windows that was intended for adults who didn't quite understand computers. But Bob worked more like a children's game. Bob would make your computer appear like a home, where to access different applications you would use different familiar devices from your home, like a notepad for notepad, a grocery list for checklists, etc. Other characters would have been around the house too, like a cartoon dog named Rover, who later appeared in Windows XP as a search companion. After its launch, Bob was criticized by media and users for being condescending and treating you like a child, even if the program was designed for adults. But speaking of adults, time for some more adult-themed content, but not in a fun way. Number 1, Tay.ai. Tay.ai was an AI designed to be a chatbot and Twitter account that learned from its environment and was supposed to prove that Microsoft's AI was truly groundbreaking and it would change the world. Within 24 hours, Tay was a racist, foul-mouthed fascist who agreed with Hitler and thought all feminists sucked and should burn in hell. She also wanted the wall between the states and Mexico because she doesn't want to interact with others even though she's an AI and does not have a physical body. The wall wouldn't help you, girl. Okay. That honestly goes to show you the internet culture and how anyone who goes on the internet can really see the world. Microsoft has since restricted Tay's tweets to followers of the account and aren't accepting any more follow requests, or at least they haven't accepted mine. Her bio reads, the official account of Tay, Microsoft's AI. Fam from the internet who's got zero chill. The more you talk, the smarter Tay gets. Zero chill? I wouldn't call this zero chill. Within 15 hours she called feminism a cult and a cancer, as well as saying gender equality equals feminism, and I love feminism now. Tay also tweeted Bruce Jenner and responded to hate, saying Caitlyn is a hero and is a stunning beautiful woman, as well as getting full-on hater and saying Caitlyn Jenner isn't a real woman, yet she won Woman of the Year. Tay.ai sounds like a bad iOS game that would just parody other IO games. Either way, Tay.ai was something Microsoft should have never done because it's open to the public. Everyone can see your racist artificial intelligence. Yikes.